shoot. Fires from the top of the key and banks it home. The Liberty take a 2-point lead.
Welcome to Liberty FM, the podcast dedicated to all things New York Liberty. I'm Felicia, and I'm joined by my co-host and husband, Francois. This is episode 19, recapping Game 2 between the Liberty and the Mystics. This was a nail-biter that went to overtime, so let's get into it. Francois, how are you feeling today? I know I felt tired waking up this morning like I played in the game.
Whew. I don't know. My blood pressure was so high. This was a roller coaster of a game.
Yeah.
What a game. I mean, whether you're a Liberty fan or Washington Mystic fan, the tension at the Barclays as we speak, wow, it was incredible. Incredible game. A playoff like we want to see between two great teams. So it was something to remember, that's for sure. But thankfully, the outcome was good for us as Liberty fans. But we knew that it was going to be a tough game. It was win or go home for the Mystics. So literally they had to give everything they got in order to not go out. And Natasha Cloud had made sure her assignment was going to be to defend 40 minutes against Breanna because she felt that their defense in the previous game was subpar and they allowed Breanna to shine. And oh boy, she really took that assignment at heart. The way she defended on Breanna from the get-go and also on offense, it was probably the best game of Natasha Cloud's career. And it could have been close to being an historic performance to give the win for the Mystics, right?
Yeah, I mean, you got to give kudos. You may think of Natasha Cloud as the villain, and she don't mind being called the villain, but she came to do her job, and she did her job. I know they didn't get the win, and we are happy as Liberty fans that the Liberty won this game, but this game really could have gone either way, and Natasha Cloud was at the helm for the Washington Mystics, leading the way. I mean, she had the highest score for both teams. So, points scored. And so she really put the team on her back, offensively and defensively. And she definitely, I'm sure she was a pain in Breanna's side the whole night because she didn't let up, and it wasn't until maybe towards the end, I feel like, she wasn't on her as much, but man, she stayed on her hard. Like, I don't know if Breanna had a chance to breathe, really. She was trying to fight through all those plays, trying to get a shot off, and she got some shots off. She did get some points, but it wasn't compared to what she got in game one.
Yeah, I think sometimes you don't realize when you watch the game on TV, but for us who were at the Barclays, it was really incredible to watch. Like, Natasha Cloud was non-stop from like the start of the game on defense, on offense. She was like giving 200%, and I don't know how she found the energy to play like that pretty much the whole game. But even if we're not rooting for the Mystics, it was a beautiful thing to watch. And to be honest, even at some point, Sandy Brondello said after the game that they literally had to use Breanna and Vandersloot as decoys because they knew they were not going to have the same level of freedom and the same ability to shoot threes just like in game one. So you knew that Breanna was not necessarily going to have like a 29 points performance, but maybe a more all-around performance, which she did. And what I was expecting in this game is to have a more aggressive Stewart, and even though her field goal percentage was still kind of shaky, she was definitely more aggressive and try to not force shots as much, but really try to attack the basket, unlike game one, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, the focus, game one, I feel was more about Stewart, and that set Breanna off. And obviously Benijah as well. Benijah is the grounding force of that team. But in this game, in game two, it just seemed like the Mystic strategy was focusing. I mean, Natasha Cloud was on Breanna, but they definitely double teamed her a lot throughout game two, which gave Stewie a little bit more freedom. And on top of that, Stewie being more aggressive in this game. You know, she was the leading scorer for the team. And so it really helped to free up Stewie a little bit because now, like Sandy said, like later on they realized it, but basically Sabrina was just a decoy and you really had to rely on others. You had to rely on everyone else contributing, whether it was Benijah, JJ, Stewie, and then from the bench you had KT, and just performances by everyone there. You just see that the Liberty came together and grinded out this win. They had moments where it seemed shaky. We'll get into that.
We'll get into the second half for sure.
But I will say, you know, to start off with the first half, the Mystics definitely came out strong. Being led by Natasha Cloud for sure. But the Liberty started to get it going, even with Benijah and JJ. And that's one thing, and Stewie. And, you know, that's one thing I will say for them going forward is they need to get, in particular, those three going all the time. Like Sabrina's going to be a focus for defense because of that of her 3-point shot. It's just going to be what it is. And so obviously the focus might be more her and Stewie at times. And so you need people like Benijah. You need to feed Jonquel Jones in the paint. You know, even JJ, I mean, she had 8 or 9 rebounds in the first half.
Yeah, she did.
And so, you know, you got to give it up for JJ too. What a performance by her, and just seeing everyone do so well all around, or fighting for it so well all around.
Yeah, I have to say though that it took a long time for the Liberty to, you know, give the ball to Jonquel in the paint and for her to post up Hines Allen because, you know, the matchup, it was favorable for the Liberty, and it was only with 6 minutes left in the second quarter that JJ got a first post up, and then from that moment on, I think that, you know, we knew that it was going to be something that the Liberty had to focus on. Unfortunately, they didn't do it, you know, as consistently as they should have. And when you look on the other end, the Mystics were playing on their strength, like Natasha Cloud attacking the basket, giving the ball to Deladon, and if there was a double team, punishing the Liberty with an open player. So, you know, I was definitely confident seeing JJ scoring on the inside and also being a dominant force on the boards. And then towards the end of the second quarter, like, things were, you know, were flowing for the Liberty. Like Sabrina started making shots. The Liberty started to be more patient offensively and turning the, you know, having ball movement. So at the end of the second quarter, the Liberty were up by 11, and you felt like confident that, oh, maybe, you know, it's not necessarily going to be a stressful night, that, you know, they're confident of their force and they're going to get the job done. But before we look into the third quarter, and that's something we've discussed quite a few times, and we noticed that, you know, being at the Barclays, we can notice that, is that every time there's the halftime show, and then there's usually about 7 minutes of, you know, downtime for teams to come back on the court and warm up before the third quarter. And very often, the Liberty come very, very late, you know, usually 2-3 minutes before the start of the third quarter. And it was very striking this time around because the Washington Mystics came back literally like almost like 8 minutes before the start because they knew, like, you know, we're down by 11. We needed to make sure to get ready to warm up and get going in the third quarter. The Liberty came with like 2 minutes and very chill. And so, you know, sometimes you think, oh, it's not that much of a big deal and, you know, they need the rest in the locker room or just like, you know, take a breather. But when we saw how the third quarter started, you couldn't help thinking that it played a part in how this third quarter started, right?
Yeah, it was definitely a question that I had. I'm not sure if, you know, coming out a few minutes before the second half begins is a huge help for most teams, but you can tell that any of practice is a help to some degree, at least to, you know, get warmed up. And, you know, to see the Mystics on the court, I mean, immediately after, they were taking the lights and all that stuff off the court, and the Mystics were right behind them to get back on the court to warm up and do a little practice. Like, and I was surprised because I was like, wow, it's like nearly 8 minutes. And then you look up and it was just like maybe just hitting about the 2-minute mark. And the Liberty starters, I would say some of the bench players were out on the court already, but the starters didn't come out until the 2 minutes. And they really only have a minute to warm up because at that point, that last minute, all the teams are going back to their benches and, you know, getting their coaching and having their thing with their coaches. So I was surprised that they came out so late. And then it showed in the third quarter. There was no movement, barely anything. And you could just tell, like, I don't know if they thought they were up by 30, but I'm like, this is 11 points. Like, you know, a couple of threes from Natasha Cloud or Sykes or Atkins. I mean, it could throw this whole game. And basically, it just seemed lackluster in the third quarter. I mean, looking at the box score, the Liberty won the first 2 quarters and the Mystics won the last 2 quarters. Yeah. And so that's what brought the Mystics back into this game. And the Liberty, you know, even if they had some open shots, they just weren't going down. And yeah, there was just no ball movement. And we just kept saying, like, man, get it into JJ. Yeah. Like, this is your bread and butter. You know, it's typically Hines Allen on JJ. And she wasn't, for me, JJ has to stay in the paint. She just, like, that is her bread and butter. She should stay in the paint. She will be so much more dominant. I feel like she could have fouled out a couple people, before the game ended, had you been really feeding it to her the whole time. And so it was just bizarre to watch. But then at the same time, you get this sinking feeling like, oh man, are the Mystics going to take this game? It's like, you can't take game 2. And then also reading the stat that the Liberty were 0-9 for game 2 playoff appearances. And so
things were not looking great statistically.
It wasn't looking good. And then, you know, it was just the Mystics just kept coming, and it just seemed a host of errors for the Liberty and just a lackluster performance. And they tried to climb back, but yeah, it was a weird start to the second half for sure.
Yes, definitely. I mean, I was very frustrated with the third and fourth quarter with the Liberty. Like, we've been accustomed to their ball movement, and it felt like they were, I mean, you could argue that, you know, the Mystics defense was suffocating them, but it was also a lot of just like dribbling for a long time, not really passing the ball and waiting like the last few seconds to get going. I mean, what was, striking was coming from a timeout when the Mystics had, you know, come back 57-54, and coming out of a timeout, like, the Liberty didn't realize that they only had, like, you know, maybe a dozens of seconds, and Benaja Laney had the ball and literally didn't realize that there was only 2 seconds left, and then didn't take a shot. And that, you know, at that level, at such a critical game, that was not good enough. Even though Benaja was great all game long, as a team overall, you know, we kind of let the Mystics getting back into this game. And I got to also talk about the rotations and the minutes that the starters had. You know, we had talked about this in the previous game, especially in regards to keys to the game and what we felt like Sandy was going to do. And you look at the minutes, I mean, the starters played tons of minutes, and Sandy barely relied on the bench. I mean, you know, you had KT that probably had the most minutes with like 12 or 14 minutes. And then you had Maureen Johannes, who had only 4 minutes. I mean, she's not like a random player. She's not like someone that cannot, you know, play at this level. I mean, she played, you know, at the highest level in Europe. So I'm sure she could, you know, manage such an important game. And it's not like she was inefficient for the 4 minutes she got to play. I mean, defensively, she was holding her own. She was good. Offensively, she only took one shot. She missed it, but like you can't do much in 4 minutes. And at some point, I told you this, when it was happening. So, obviously, Vandersloot needed a breather because she had to play a lot of minutes. But she decided to replace Vandersloot with Katie to bring some defensive presence. But then you only had Sabrina as a point guard, and knowing the pressure that Natasha Cloud was putting on Sabrina, that was going to be tough for Sabrina to just, taking the lead as the point guard. But they actually decided to have Benaja as the point guard for those minutes. And, Benaja can handle the ball, but I think she's more efficient when she has to dribble from the three-point line to attack the basket, but not as the leading point guard, especially with Sykes and Cloud putting so much pressure. And during those minutes, like, it didn't last for very long. It was about 2 or 3 minutes, but the lineup was a little shaky, So I felt like Sandy could have trusted the bench a little bit more. We know that obviously, it's hard for someone like Nia Sabali to get a lot of playing time. She's a rookie, and you're not sure how she will handle that pressure. And then Willoughby, you could argue that she would bring a lot of presence defensively, but offensively they might let her open, and we don't know if she will make those shots or not. So,
but I think that in this case, too, you should replace a guard, or you needed a guard out there. And to me, when Sandy would have, Marine come in for either Sabrina or Vandersloot, it worked better because Marine plays well with Sabrina. They're used to playing together. But she did get into a rhythm, her and Courtney Vandersloot. They started to get into a little bit of a rhythm this season. And I think if you replace Vandersloot or Ionescu, you need to put Marine out there. Even if you have KT out there and you have Benija, you should put Marine out there because... And she can handle the ball a little bit better, I think. Bringing it up, she can do all those things. And... yeah, it's odd why you only have her in there for a couple of minutes. It's almost like she has her in there. It's like you have her in there for just a few minutes to see if she can do something spectacular and then take her out. Like there's some games kind of like the previous game that they played with the Aces, and the coach over there was like, she's like a little sniper. She comes in, and before you know it, she's already diced you up, and then she's gone. And sometimes that's good, but 4 minutes is not going to cut it. Like, you need her out there, and she can defend. I mean, she got back to her assignments very quickly. I think she deserves more minutes because as this playoff run keeps going, those minutes on your starters, it's going to wear them down. And yes, they're ready for it. Yes, but you also have to protect Sabrina. She's dealt with an injury, or maybe I don't want to say it's an injury, but she's had... I would say maybe like an achy hamstring, something going on there throughout the season. Working her like this, I just, and even she just came off of a calf thing. So it's like, to me, it's like you should use your bench more. And trust them more. And obviously, the Mystics are a tough team, so I get why she wanted her starters really out there fighting. But for future, I think this next playoff run, she's going to have to use her bench more. Yeah,
I mean, especially when you consider the Mystics had a larger rotation than the Liberty. So, I mean, you could argue that, you could use all your starters to make sure you win that game, because if you win that game, then you have pretty much like a week. Or less than a week to rest, but you have pretty much a lot of days until the next round. But if it backfires, then you end up with a third game in DC and with some players that might be gassed a little bit. So in the end, it worked out. So you gotta give props to Sandy, but I definitely felt like Marine could have had more playing time, and we reaching the fourth quarter. And to be honest, we're starting to get really worried. Because not only did the Mystic came back from that 11-point deficit, but with about 5 or 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter, they're literally taking the leads. And they had at some point like 6 or 7 point lead. and the atmosphere is suffocating. You feel like the Barclays with the different entertainment stuff during timeouts is trying their best to keep the crowd going. But you could tell that the people, we're not going to lie and pretend that we were confident all throughout. Like, at some point, we were kind of scared and like, very, like, tense, and you see the Mystics playing with confidence, hitting those shots. Cloud on a mission, continuing to score baskets after baskets.
She had some acrobatic
shots.
Yeah,
like some layups where she's like those reverse layup in front of JJ. And, there was that play that really frustrated me where at some point, I don't know if it was regular time or overtime, my emotions were all over the place. But at some point, like, Deladon had the ball, on the post. And Stewart decided to double team on Deladon, which left Natasha Cloud completely on her own. And homegirl has been cooking the whole game.
She's the hot hand of the game.
She's the hot hand, so you do not want to let this woman shooting threes with the performance she had in that game. So it's just like, little details, obviously there's a lot of tension, there's like fatigue that makes you sometimes do things that you wouldn't normally do. But at that very moment, I felt like the momentum was literally shifting in favor of the Mystics. But, that's probably the reason why, they brought all those players that, the general manager, Jonathan Cobbs, brought players like Stewie, like Jonquel Jones, like Van der Sloot. They are accustomed to those moments, those big moments. And so, even though I was worried, I was like, deep down inside, I was like, I feel like, they have the players to, shift the momentum and make a comeback. And they did, they started feeding JJ more. She was incredible, scoring really like baskets when the team needed it the most. Stewie started getting going as well. At some point, Breanna, decided to attack the basket, and Sloot didn't back down. A field goal percentage this season has been up and down, but I always feel like when it matters the most, she makes those shots, and that was very reminiscent of Van der Sloot of 2 seasons ago in the incredible playoff she had with the Chicago Sky. And so at this point, it was back and forth between the Mystics and the Liberty, and we had a chance to take control of this game, but unfortunately, very shaky in those crucial moments where we turned the ball over. Natasha Cloud stole the ball, got fouled, scored the 2 free throws. The Mystics are up 76-74. And then at some point, on the other end, Stewie gets the ball. She misses the layup. The ball rolls over the rim forever. Miraculously, the Liberty get the rebound. They pass the ball to Breanna, who gets fouled. And there's about, I don't know, maybe 10 seconds left or something like that.
There was there was close to, it was like 20-something seconds left, yeah, for sure.
But you're like, okay, Breanna is our best free throw shooter of the team. She's like 90%, so, she's going to, make buckets. She misses the first one. The crowd is gasping like, wow, what is going on? And so then you wonder, like, what should you do? Because you make the second one, that's a 1-point lead for the Mystics, but they have the ball, so you have to foul them. They'll probably make the free throws. That's a 3-point game, and then, you really don't have control of the game. And so she misses the second one, but the trajectory of the ball, it makes you think that she missed it on purpose. And she did confirm after the game that she missed it on purpose in a way that could give them a chance to get the ball. And Stewie mentioned as well after the game that her and Jonquel looked at each other and decided to cross paths in the paint to make it really confusing for the defense. And Jonquel Jones got that ball, incredible rebound.
She was the player of the game.
She was the player of the game.
She saved them.
And nobody really would want to say it, but we got to give props to Jonquel Jones. She was the person that saves the Liberty in that game. Whether you want to post a picture of her or not after the game on Twitter, talking about ESPN, she was the player of the game. And that rebound, if she doesn't get that rebound, the game is pretty much over. They fouled Jonquel Jones. She had missed a couple of free throws in the first half, but she didn't miss those two crucial free throws to tie the game. And then miraculously afterwards, the Liberty managed to, tighten up the defense and not concede a basket.
But can I just say that there were a host of errors in this last minute. It was a wild scene, and being at the Barclays, you have to understand everyone is out of their seat because it's just a couple of points, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is like, you're thinking the Mystics could take this game, and we're gonna have to go to a game 3. And at the same time, you're like, come on, Liberty, we can do this. So yeah, watching Sabrina, and I'm sorry, it was about 15-ish seconds or so, but like watching her miss that first foul shot, it was like so surprising. I think everybody was just quiet because you were like, she missed it, oh no. And then watching Jonquel get that rebound, get fouled, make those shots, tie it up. And then I was telling you, I was like, well, do you try to foul somebody who's not a good free throw shooter to get the ball back? Like, what do you do? And then the next play, we're thankful to the Mystics because it was just a botched play, a bad pass from Cloud to Sykes that went right out of bounds, ball to the Liberty. And the Liberty, well, even after that, another host of errors. The Liberty got the ball back.
Nobody wanted to win that game.
Stewart tried to get it to Stewie. It went through her legs, and then Sykes got it with a couple seconds, but she wasn't able to get a shot off, so we went to overtime. But the last minute of that game, I have to say, I know whoever's listening out there, if you were watching or at the arena, I felt like I was going to have a heart attack. Because I was like,
it was crazy. Like, I had to literally, hold you for quite a few times to hold my breath.
I had to sit down. I was like, this is intense.
And to make it worse, I felt like the Barclays play a couple of, videos on the Jumbotron to add more tension. You know, they were, having that sort of, action kind of type of music. They were showing clutch plays and clutch moments, to add some tension as if we needed that at that very moment. I was looking at the people around me, over season ticket holders and newer fans. Everybody was just gas and blood pressure super high. So only sports can give you emotions like this, and that was definitely the best playoff game so far this season. And the overtime, I felt and maybe in a way, the overtime, for some strange reason, I was feeling a little bit more confident because I was like, okay, you have a little, break, before the start of the overtime. You got players of experience. For some strange reason, they decided to go with Brittany Sykes on the jump ball to start the overtime. Yeah. She can jump really high, but I didn't feel like she was going to beat Jonquel Jones. So it gave her the possession right away, and I felt like, the Liberty attacked this game at this overtime the way they needed to. They reverted to Breanna Stewart, Jonquel Jones. Now, I mentioned the Van der Sloot shot with Benajanleni attacking the basket. It was actually during the overtime that it happened. And so, I felt confident, but those Mystics, man, they would not give up.
I mean, they're relentless. And so, obviously the Mystics know if we lose this game, we're out. At least they're trying to win it to get it back on their home court, So they're going to do whatever they can. And they were doing that. It was just, thankfully, the Liberty had a couple of key shots in there. And I think, moving forward, I just hope they look at film and, do what they do. But for this next playoff round, I need JJ to get down in the paint. I need Stewie to get, I think, depending on who they're matched up with. It depends on the matchup,
definitely. So.
Whether it's Minnesota or Connecticut, they got to get in the paint more, especially JJ. There was one play by JJ. I think it was the only play of the game where she was pretty much at the top of the key and she had the ball and there was space to get to the basket, and I think she realized she can dribble down to the basket, and she made that shot and she made that layup. And I was like, this is what I need to see more of. Yeah. Even if JJ's at the top of the key, take them on, and she did that. She took on Hines Allen. She got that shot down, and so that's what you need to see more of, because the Liberty, yes, their 3-point shots, once it starts raining threes, it can be a barrage of threes.
Except that for this game,
it was
probably
not
their worst performance. I think they were 4 for 21 or 23.
But I will definitely credit that also to the Mystics defense. They played them tight. They played them well, especially at the 3-point line. And so I will credit that. Yes, they had some missed open shots as well, but you got to give kudos to the Mystics defense. But I will say that the one thing they have to get better at, and I don't, if you're going to do that in the next playoff games or not, but you got to continue to feed JJ. You got to get downhill and penetrate. Like, you can't just stay at the top of the key all the time looking for a 3-point shot. And it's tough. The Liberty rely on moving the ball. They definitely had some moments where they moved the ball so beautifully, whether the shot went in or not. And that's their bread and butter. But there's going to be times in these playoffs where the 3-point line is going to get blocked. You're going to have some strong defensive teams out there, and they're going to need to find other ways to get to the basket.
Yeah, no, I'm going to share a quote that I thought was great. Lucas Kaplan, who's a great journalist that follows the New York Liberty and the Brooklyn Nets. And he was saying, on Twitter, his quick takeaway from the series, he was saying that the Liberty's offense built on side-to-side ball movement and quick, aggressive sealing was historic in the regular season, but the Liberty don't have a ton in the way of downhill dribble penetration, and they met the league's best POA defense in the first round. And so he continued by saying a really important first playoff test for an offense that's more radical than people may realize, and that it will be interesting to see how this ages should this team stick together for a while. And he ended up, and I think that's the key, they can play some defense. And that definitely was what won the game, besides obviously a great performance by Jonquel Jones. It was the defense. When things were not necessarily working great on offense, they knew how to rely on defense, and they had the stops that they needed. When you saw that, especially the first game, I remember the first quarter of the first game where, they allowed the Mystics to score way too easily. And in a way, the same thing happened in this game in the first quarter. But when they needed stops, they had those stops, and overall, we got the win 90-85. You wouldn't have believed that it was the first round, right? It was almost like a semifinal or a final.
This really should have been and again, I think Sandy said this as well. The Mystics are not a 7 seed. They are only a 7 seed due to injury. That is it. It is not. They are not a 7 seed. They are definitely top 3 for sure. That's the team you played. They were missing one person, and if Shakira Austin was in the lineup, I would think it would get real dicey for the Liberty, because the Mystics played them toe-to-toe.
Yeah, they would have definitely had a matchup for Jonquel Jones. And what was interesting, I saw Shakira Austin actually tweeted, "If only."
Yeah.
And that was the tweet.
It's true. Because if she was in there, I think
that's a different series.
It's a different series. She is tall. She can take on. She's great defensively, and she would have been a force against JJ. Thankfully for us, we got the series win. But look out for the Mystics next year, because with that team, it's going to be tough. They are definitely top 3 easily.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot of questions for the Mystics. They have quite a few unrestricted free agents, and obviously figuring out what they're going to do with Daladon, who is on the max contract. Obviously, she's one of the best players of the past decade, but, the last few seasons, she was injured a lot. She played, I think, something like 51 games on, maybe potential 130 games over the last 3 or 4 years. So, spending max contract on a player that plays so little, but could be, obviously, when she's healthy, so dominant, that's a lot of questions that the Mystics will have to figure out. And I felt like, I got to give props to Natasha Cloud, though, because... Yeah. She said she likes to be the villain, and I definitely understand why. When she waved us goodbye at the end of the regular season, I was mad. I'm not gonna front, even though I felt like, it's not that important. Like, that game didn't count, but she did wave us goodbye though, and she enjoyed, being the center of attention and being the villain. But I gotta give her props. Not only did she get 100% and almost beat the Liberty. Almost pretty much by herself. She, her post-game interview was, beautiful to watch, and I really encourage you to watch it if you find it on YouTube. But you could see the emotion that she had, when she was asked about, her role in the organization and how, the Mystics were the only team that, focused on her and decided to take a chance on her 8 years ago coming from college. And, she won the title in 2019. She gave everything to this organization, blood, sweat, and tears. And she was literally in tears when she was talking. So even if you're not Mystic fans, you got to respect the hustle and how she played and gave everything. The Liberty crowd recognized that and, applauded her when she... left the court.
I think that's what got her emotional. The love and respect she got from Liberty fans.
But what I really like though is that she gave her props to Sabrina.
Yeah.
I know there was tension was running high during the game. They were staring down and stuff. And I know her and Brittany Sykes always kind of gave a hard time to Sabrina those past couple of seasons, just to test the water, see what this woman is made of.
Yeah.
But she gave her props to Sabrina because Sabrina overall in that series has responded to the challenge that Natasha offered her, and I love that. Real recognized real. She saw that Sabrina is a baller and responded, and gave her flower at the end of the game and at the post-game conference, and I love to see that. That's when you gain respect by showing up on the court, and none of the rest or whatever people say would matter in the end if you show up on the court.
Yeah, for Natasha Cloud and Brittany Sykes, because even at the end of the game, you saw Brittany Sykes hug Sabrina and hold her, and she was saying something to her. Obviously, we don't know what was said, but it just looked as if she was just encouraging Sabrina or just giving her respect and all of that, and it was a good embrace. And so you see these things, you don't know what was said, but it looked like an overall good encounter. And then to see just Natasha Cloud in the press conference, and she is a player you want on your team.
Yeah.
Period.
I mean, she would be great with the Liberty, but I don't see her signing for a different team than the Mystics.
She talked about the Mystics, taking a chance on her and keeping her around and being part of this organization and them having her back. You need to keep having her back because she put the team on her back last night. There is no question. And she deserves her flowers. She deserves everything because she did it offensively, defensively. They just came up short at the very end. I mean, they only lost by 5 points, and that was in overtime. Yeah. And so, you got to give it up to her. She is a player I would want on the Liberty. I would want her there. I would even want Sykes if she was available. I'd be like, these two, you might hate them being their opponent, but on your team, those are two players you are going to want on your team because they drive this game.
Yeah, now it just reminded me of that play towards the end of the fourth quarter where the Liberty were up by 3, 74-71, and we felt like maybe we're going to get that win. And at some point, Natasha Cloud attacked the basket, missed the shot. Stewart kind of sort of bounced the ball. Yeah. But if you look at the replay, Natasha Cloud is fighting for the ball as well and kind of pushed it to Brittany Sykes in that corner.
Corner 3.
She made that shot. You should like when I rewatched some of the video I took from the game, the whole crowd is mad. They're mad because Brittany says, she literally shuts the crowd after she made that shot. And so those are the kind of players that just like annoys you like so much if you're not rooting for them and their team. But boy, they definitely put some entertainment out there.
Those are players you got to keep on your squad. For the Mystics, they'll be back and they're going to be tough. They're going to be a tough opponent next year. There's no question because they have excellent players over there, and so they're going to be tough. Definitely.
So we're moving to the next round. Believe it or not, the first time since 2015, which was ages ago in basketball time. So we're definitely ecstatic. And so as we're recording this podcast, the game between Minnesota and Connecticut just started. So we do not know at this very moment who the Liberty are going to face. We know on the other side of the the playoff, the Las Vegas Aces are going to face the Dallas Wings, and that's going to be a heck of a series as well. I feel like Dallas, besides the Mystics and the New York Liberty, is the team that could challenge the Las Vegas Aces. So I definitely feel it's going to be an interesting series. But then when you look at the two opponents that the Liberty could face, whether Connecticut and Minnesota, obviously, we don't know until things will happen. But those are two matchups that I think are favorable for the Liberty if you compare it to what the Mystics offered as a matchup. We beat the Connecticut Sun 4 times in the regular season. Obviously, one of the game was tight and went to overtime. The Minnesota Lynx beat us once. We beat them twice. But that last game was, spectacular. We beat them by close to 40. Now, I feel like the Minnesota Lynx, they need to have a tremendous performance from Natasha Cloud and Kayla McBride for them to have a slim chance.
But I think also you got to remember this is now the playoffs. And although the records were favorable for the Liberty in the regular season, it's a whole new ball game. And so, I would think this matchup is favorable either team you get. But the Liberty can't go off of what they did in the regular season because just like I think it was Stewie that was saying this previously that it resets. You have to look at it as a reset. Like the teams come harder. Playoff basketball is a different beast. And people are going to play their best brand of basketball. And so you can't sleep on Connecticut. Yeah, you may think Minnesota might not be a threat, but no. I would say they could still be a threat to the Liberty. But if the Liberty can play the defense like they've been playing defense and play their game, play to their strengths, if it goes that way, they can pull this out and get to the final. But you can't go off of, in my mind, you can't go off of the regular season. That may help you, but you don't know what the game plan is come postseason. Yeah,
but there's no better way than the first one, like the one we had, to prepare you for the next round, though.
Yeah, I feel like the next round, though, won't be as intense because you got 5 games. So you have to win, best of 3. So it could be, but I do feel like the Liberty facing the Mystics in the first round, it was such, I don't know, like an anomaly because it just shouldn't have. I just felt like that's not a 7th seed. The Mystics are not a 7th seed, so it just felt like this should have been a semi instead of first round. This should have definitely been a semi game, and so I don't know. I think this next round may feel a little bit more even, if you will. Like, it might give a slight edge to the Liberty, or it might be a little more, I don't know, relaxed might be too much. They're not
going to relax. It's playoff time.
No, they shouldn't relax. But what I'm saying is the intensity of it might come down a notch because that intensity level, you don't have a Natasha Cloud or a Sykes. You do have Alyssa Thomas in Connecticut, and you got Bonner. Those two can turn it up.
Yeah.
And yes, for Minnesota, you got Natasha Collier and Kayla McBride. So it depends. It really depends.
It would be definitely interesting. And so that game, game 1, would be on Sunday at 7 o'clock. What's 7 o'clock?
Nope.
1 p.m. I wish it was a little later than 1 p.m., but it would be on Sunday. Game 2 will be on Tuesday at 8 o'clock, if I'm not mistaken. And then the third game will probably be 2 or 3 days later to be determined the time. I haven't checked that out. But first 2 games that we know would be at the Barclays. And, just to finish, for the people that said that, oh, nobody cares about the WNBA, nobody's watching, blah, blah, blah. The amount of celebrities that were there at the Barclays yesterday, where should we start?
I mean, the amount of people that showed up from half of the Nets team to Fat Joe, Swiss Beats, Carmelo Anthony and his son,
Julius Randle, even though they didn't mention it.
They didn't show Julius Randle because you're in the Brooklyn. You're at the Barclays. You're not.
And he plays for the Knicks.
So, he plays for the Knicks.
Even though he was wearing the New York Liberty hoodie, though.
Yeah, but he's still a Knicks player. They're like, no, we're not showing you.
Jason
Sudeikis, who's been there on and off throughout the season. And previous games, there's been quite a few, and I think as they keep going on this playoff run, you're probably going to see some more people show up. So it's a good turnout, and definitely, people care. People care about the WNBA.
I mean, the atmosphere was electric, and I don't think I've ever witnessed that before. Even for no disrespect, we love our Brooklyn Nets as well, but even with the Brooklyn Nets, I don't think I've experienced such an atmosphere. Yeah. And you also have to mention like the Liberty community, like it brings people from so many different backgrounds or walks of life that I don't think you will find out anywhere else in the world. It's a microcosm of the world at those Liberty games. Yeah. So that makes it really special.
And it's family fun too, because you got a lot of kids, there's just so much. And even though they may not fill the whole stadium because they tend to block the upper level off, only if it's like certain games they might open up the upper level.
Believe me, they will open it.
Yeah, for the finals they definitely should, especially if the Liberty get there, and if it's the Aces like they usually do. When it's the Aces, they open the upper level and it's packed. It's going to be insane. And even with just the lower level being full, to see the towels, everybody getting into it, everybody going. I've been to plenty of Nets games. We've even gone to a playoff game, watched playoff game. Nothing beats it. And it, like the Liberty, like, I'm sorry, like just the lower level packed out of the Liberty noise level has beaten what we've seen at Nets games when you have both levels open.
Yeah, I think the only maybe games that match up that energy was the infamous playoff series between the Brooklyn Nets and the Milwaukee Bucks when KD was carrying the team on his back. That's probably the closest or the loudest besides Liberty games I've ever experienced. So, we don't want to completely like shade the Nets, but
no, we still love the Nets.
We still love the Nets, but please, if you listen to that podcast and haven't been to a New York Liberty game, you gotta check it out. And right now is the best time to go because it's playoff time, baby. And we'll be there on Sunday. We'll record a podcast after game 1 of the second round. So thank you so much for listening, everyone. And Felicia, as we always say,
let's go Liberty!